My parents kicked me out at 18, then tried to sue me for not helping them. I turned 18 on a Thursday. There was no cake, no hug, no happy birthday from my parents. What I got instead was a set of keys, a black garbage bag filled with my things, and 5 words I'll never forget. You're an adult now. Leave. That was it. That was my send-off. No warning. No conversation. Just a cold declaration that my childhood had expired like spoiled milk, and it was time to move on. Let me give you some context because I know how Reddit works. You want receipts, not just sob stories. So here it is. My parents had always been cruel, but in the subtle, calculated way that makes you second-guess yourself for years. They weren't screaming narcissists or physical abusers. They were something worse. Entitled, conditional, performative. They saw parenting as a loan. Every meal, every ride to school, every doctor visit, tallied in some invisible ledger they expected to cash in on later. And me? I was the investment that didn't pan out. It was exactly 8:01 a.m. when my mom walked into my room. I was still in bed, jobless, freshly graduated, and scared of everything. My friends had either gone off to college or moved out of town. I had no car, no savings, no prospects. I had spent the summer applying to local retail jobs, hearing nothing back. She stood at my door and said, flatly, "Your room needs to be empty by noon." I blinked. What? You're 18 now. You're not our responsibility anymore. I thought she was joking. But when I went downstairs, I found my dad sitting at the kitchen table with a manila envelope, a small box of my things, most of which I didn't even recognize, and a printed packet labeled, Agreement of Non-Responsibility for Adult Child. Yes, they made me sign paperwork. No, I didn't read it all. I was too confused, too numb. I just signed it in shock. They gave me a plastic grocery bag with bottled water, a protein bar, and $80 in cash. That was it. The first few nights, I stayed on a classmate's couch, then on the floor of someone's cousin's apartment. One night, I even slept in a public library's 24-hour lobby area. I told myself it was temporary, that something would come through. Eventually, I got a part-time job at a fast food joint, 20 hours a week, minimum wage. I worked every shift they gave me. I ate leftover nuggets and lived off vending machine coffee. I showered at a local gym on a stolen guest pass. My phone got shut off. My shoes had holes. I was losing weight, not in a good way. I was 18, alone, and already halfway to broken. Man standing, why didn't I ask for help? Because I didn't have anyone. No siblings. No close extended family. No one I could call without swallowing the shame of what had just happened to me. And if you're thinking, why didn't you just go to shelter? I almost did, but I was terrified. Pride, fear, and denial formed a lethal cocktail. I kept thinking this was a test, that maybe if I stuck it out, they'd call and say, "Okay, lesson learned. Come home." They didn't. Hammer and wrench, slowly rebuilding. It took me 2 years to get out of survival mode. First, I got a second job, janitorial work at a warehouse. Gross hours, gross smells, but it paid better. I saved up enough for a shared apartment with 3 other people. That's when I finally exhaled, for the first time since my birthday. I enrolled in community college, part-time, took business classes at night, worked during the day. I didn't sleep much. I cried a lot, but I was rebuilding inch by inch, and every inch I earned was mine. I didn't hear from my parents for 4 entire years. No texts, no birthday messages, nothing. Then, out of nowhere, I got a voicemail. "Hi, it's your mother. Just wanted to let you know that your father's not doing well health-wise. He's been out of work for a while. I know we've had our differences, but family is family. Give us a call back, okay?" I didn't. Not out of spite. Out of sheer confusion. Where was this energy when I was starving? When I was sleeping in a laundry room? Now I was supposed to pick up the pieces? Here's the plot twist they never saw coming. I started my own business. After college, I freelanced online, digital marketing, email copy, eventually web design. I built a tiny but loyal client base. In year 3, I incorporated, hired 2 contractors, then a part-time assistant. By age 25, I was clearing 6 figures. Modest for some, but for me, it felt like I'd cracked the goddamn matrix. I didn't buy a Lamborghini. I bought a decent car, paid rent 6 months in advance, and finally got therapy. I still didn't talk to my parents. At 26, I received a certified letter in the mail from a law firm. My parents were suing me for parental support. Yes, that's a thing. In some states, I won't say which for privacy, there are obscure laws that allow elderly or disabled parents to sue their adult children for financial support if they're deemed indigent. They claim I had a moral and legal obligation to support them because they had raised me for 18 years at significant cost and were now unable to maintain a basic standard of living. I nearly laughed. Then I cried. Then I hired a lawyer. That my parents had provided me with food, clothing, and shelter during my upbringing and were therefore entitled to compensation. That I had benefited from their sacrifices. That I was financially able to support them and was refusing out of malicious resentment. That they had no other children or assets, and I was their only option. My attorney said, I've never seen a case this morally repulsive, but legally, it could stick, depending on the judge. I felt sick. I wanted to scream. They kicked me out. They left me to fend for myself. Now they wanted to hold a bill to my face. I won't lie, this broke me. Not the lawsuit, but what it meant. I thought I was done grieving. I thought I had closed that chapter. But when that letter arrived, all the old wounds cracked open like fault lines under pressure. My therapist helped me realize what I hadn't admitted out loud. I still wanted them to love me. I still wanted an apology. And now I was never going to get one. So I did what I hadn't done in years. I confronted them. I showed up at their house. Not to yell, not to beg, but to look them in the eye and ask, why? I never expected walking back into my parents' house after 7 years would feel like stepping into a cage. I still remember the creak of the floorboards under my boots, the stale smell of overcooked casseroles and fading perfume, the same faded wallpaper, the same chipped coffee mugs, everything exactly as was the last day I left. Only this time, I was standing tall, lawyer in hand, not a scared kid clutching a trash bag. My mother opened the door, surprise flashing in her eyes before she masked it with a tight smile. You came back, she said, voice like ice. I had to. I said, we need to talk. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one I'd spilled juice on as a toddler. I laid the lawsuit papers between us like a gauntlet. Why? I asked, why are you suing me? My father, sitting across from me, stared down at his coffee, not meeting my eyes. You owe us, he said finally. You should help your parents. It's your duty. Duty? I repeated. Is that what you call kicking me out with a trash bag and $80? Leaving me to sleep on strangers' couches? Where was my duty then? That was different. My mother snapped. You were disrespectful. Being homeless isn't disrespectful. It's survival. You should have called us. You never answer my calls. You blocked me. You pretended I didn't exist. Silence. My attorney was a woman named Jessica, sharp and no nonsense, who didn't sugarcoat things. This is an uphill battle, she warned. Some states have filial responsibility laws on the books, meaning parents can claim support if they're destitute and the child is able to pay. But you said it's rare they're enforced. True, judges don't like to force adult children to pay parents who abandon them, but it happens. So what's the plan? We fight, document your independence, show you were self-sufficient, and prove they abandoned you first. Jessica asked me to gather proof. Texts, emails, photos, bank records, and character witnesses who could confirm I was never a deadbeat, but a kid pushed out into the wild. Going through old messages was brutal. Texts from teenage me, begging for rides, money, or just a little support. Calls unanswered. Emails never replied to. Photos of birthday parties I wasn't invited to. Graduation ceremonies I attended alone. Each message was a punch to the gut. But I also found something else. A thread of resilience. Every time they shut me down, I kept trying. Every time I fell, I got back up. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Sterile, emotionless. My parents sat on one side with their lawyer. I sat on the other, clutching my documents like armor. The judge listened as my parents' attorney argued. These children owe their parents for years of support and care. The defendants had a duty to contribute once capable. My attorney responded. My client was abandoned at 18, forced into homelessness, and left with no support. The law is not designed to reward such cruelty. The judge asked questions, weighing legal precedent. But I saw something else, a flicker of empathy. After the hearing, the judge took time to consider the case. During that wait, I grappled with something far heavier than court dates or legal fees. The emotional weight of betrayal. My parents weren't just trying to take money. They were trying to rewrite history, to make me the villain in a story where I was the victim. I wasn't sure if I wanted to win or to walk away. One of the few bright spots was reconnecting with old friends and community members who offered support, legal advice, meals, even a place to crash when stress overwhelmed me. They reminded me I wasn't alone. The courtroom was silent the day the judge announced the verdict. I sat with my heart pounding so loud I was sure the whole room could hear it. The judge cleared his throat, glanced at the files, and spoke. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, this court finds the claim of parental support invalid in this case. The defendant was legally emancipated and abandoned by the plaintiffs at the age of 18, and no duty to provide financial support exists under the law. Relief and disbelief washed over me in waves. I wanted to cry, but the emotions were so raw I could barely breathe. Winning the case wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my narrative. For so long, my parents tried to frame me as the ungrateful child, a leech who owed them a lifetime of payments. But the truth was something else entirely. I was the one who had been abandoned. This verdict was a validation of my years of struggle and resilience. They never apologized, never admitted wrongdoing. They didn't even show up to the final hearing. At first, that hurt more than losing the lawsuit would have. But then I realized closure doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means acceptance. I could never change the past, but I could control what came next. I took this chance to rebuild my life on my terms. I moved into a better apartment, invested in therapy, and even started volunteering at a youth shelter, helping teens who face the same kind of family betrayal I did. I learned to forgive myself for the years lost and to trust my own strength. If you're reading this, know this. No matter how deep the betrayal, you can rise. Family doesn't always mean blood. Sometimes it means the people who choose to stand by you. And sometimes it means standing by yourself first. It had been 2 weeks since the court ruled in my favor. I was still trying to catch my breath from the ordeal, slowly rebuilding the life I always wanted, free from their control. Then, one rainy evening, I heard a sharp knock on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hesitated before opening it. There stood my mother and father, looking tired, older, and uncertain. They didn't say hi. They just looked at me, eyes searching. I swallowed hard. "Can we come in?" My mom finally asked, voice shaky. I glanced back at my small living room, my sanctuary, and then nodded. They sat quietly, the silence heavier than any argument we'd ever had. My mother broke it. "We came to talk," she said, avoiding my eyes. "After everything," I said, "why now?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "We were wrong," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to scoff, to shut the door and never look back. But instead, I did something I hadn't done before. I listened. They talked about their regrets, about loneliness, about realizing how badly they'd treated me. It wasn't a full apology, more like the first fragile steps toward one. The weight in the room was suffocating. My parents sat across from me, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before, but the damage wasn't just about words. It was about years of pain, neglect, and betrayal. They wanted forgiveness. They wanted a fresh start. But I wanted something else. Peace. I looked them in the eyes and said, "I hear what you're saying, but this isn't something I can just forget or fix overnight. I've spent years healing from wounds you caused." "We know," my mother whispered. "I'm not closing the door forever," I continued. "But right now, I need to protect myself. That means distance. Walking away wasn't easy. It felt like giving up on family, but it was also reclaiming my worth. I explained that forgiveness doesn't mean inviting toxicity back. Sometimes, saying goodbye is the bravest thing you can do. Since then, I've focused on building healthy relationships with friends, chosen family, and myself. I still have scars, but they remind me how far I've come. And for anyone out there feeling trapped by toxic family ties, know this. You deserve respect. You deserve peace. And you have a right to say goodbye.